Hi everybody, Mature Simmer here. So I've gone ahead in the off season, done some work and some studying, and I've made a decision to make a major change on the farm. So I am going to go ahead and start a dairy operation. Got some ideas on how it'll work, how it'll grow. We'll see how everything goes. But the first thing, as we talked about, is going to be getting grass in the ground. So I'm going to get my equipment out here, as I have done in the past. And then I'm going to go ahead and get myself some seeds. But in the interim, let's kind of just chat about what's going to be happening. So I haven't quite settled yet on how I'm going to liquidate the pigs. None of them are ready for sale right now. The closest I think is 15 months, which means I'd be waiting 9 months for them to fully mature. But then the challenge I'm going to have is they're going to continue to reproduce. There's nothing you can really do other than, not feed them, and then they're not worth anything either, to have them kind of stop moving up the reproductive chain. So the best I think I could do is wait for one group to fully mature in 9 months, sell them, and then kind of monitor, and as the others get really close to reproduction, sell them. The challenge there, as you might expect, is the likelihood is I'm going to make a mistake, and then I'm just going to have tiny pigs that aren't going to be worth much of anything to sell off. So I know myself better than to assume that that's just all going to work really, really well. So, but this space here is what I'm going to use to kind of build things out, with the goal of hopefully at least leaving myself enough of a path in between to still come in and out of the farm, and obviously be able to work within that space as far as what I need to do with the cows, because I'm going to have to feed them, I'm going to have to collect their output, the milk, the slurry, stuff like that, and we'll kind of see where things take us. So my challenge right now is, obviously I just decided this, so I've got a money swap going in. Sorry if you heard that. It's a very weird situation there with my steering wheel, where I let it go and it was like vibrating back and forth. So normally doesn't do that, but it was just the perfect time here. So I've only got 4,000 seeds in the silo, so I know that's not enough. So I'm going to go ahead and get some seed from the customs location. So now suddenly I'm going to have that wheel do it all the time. It's going to be terrific. So I'm going to set this to say 32,000. That should work. And that will give me enough to fill, which I think I need about 6,000, and then I should be able to fit the rest into the silo. Be really close. So if nothing else, obviously I'm going to use seed when I am planting the field, and therefore I should have some place to put things. So I've got a money transfer. I went ahead and said I'll start with 2.2 million is what I'll be transferring in here. So I'll have 3.2 million roughly. Obviously I'm going to spend some here on the seed. I may have other things I need to do, but the other thing that I'm debating time-wise, I think the smarter play is just put the grass in this year, focus on kind of getting the cows going, and don't worry about a sellable crop. I do have crop in the silo, as we well know, with me having capped off the limit there. So I should be fine, and then basically once I have grass going, I'll be able to plant every year in the southern half and just kind of keep that cycle going. So I think I'm okay. That's kind of my immediate plan right now. So let me get the seed filling here. So as we do that, so what I've determined with what we have available to us here in FSN to put on the servers, there's a few mods around the animals that I think I'm going to take advantage of. I spent some time testing things offline to just see how it works, because once again here in FSN we don't really have that opportunity. I mean, I do, but I'd have to buy something and then test it and sell it. I can't go back to a previous saved game before I had that building placed or whatever it is. So I wanted to be careful, especially knowing that as I talked about things, I was anticipating a large cash outlay, and obviously with the money I'm bringing in, you can see that is in fact accurate. So one of the things I've found is I have a way that I don't have to worry about a TMR mixer. We do have one available, but obviously keeping it full, cycling through things, that would require significant amounts of time and focus, because basically it produces about 44,000 liters of TMR before it's full, and obviously then the bins to supply that material and make it are sized accordingly. So we're talking about, 15,000, 18,000 maybe, I think, at the high end, and then like 9,000 liters on the low end is what I can put in, and that will process through and create that 40,000 liters in less than a day. Depending on how much TMR the cows need, that can suddenly become a really entertaining operation. And so I didn't even get really that far in determining what I need to do, because what I found out was if I purchase one of the cow barns that has a feeding robot, which I think is new in FS22, but it may not be. It may have been there in FS19. If it was, I've never seen it or used it. But the feeding robot basically takes the raw materials, which are hay, straw, and silage, and it's got locations for that with a much higher quantity than the TMR mixer itself. Just trying to line up here, so let me stop my chatter. Alright, I guess it did. Oh no, now it's going. So do I have... Okay, so I filled that one, but I need to fill this one. There we go. Alright, so now I believe I am full there. I'll go... I can't put the rest in the silo, but I'm going to probably need more fertilizer. But the silo itself, I think, has a max of 27,000, so... Oh my goodness, I don't know, maybe there was some reset. I did have like a computer update. Maybe there's some reset that did something to the springiness on my, or the center return on my wheel, but literally now every time I release it, it's jiggling back and forth. So as I said, hopefully You know, and it's not like it's a bad thing. I mean, the spring is pretty tight, but it just is taking a while to settle into the center section. So the cow barn with that is nearly $1 million on its own, and that will hold 240 animals. Now, there was an alternative that would hold 500, but it doesn't have a feeding robot, and in addition, that one requires me to manually fill it with water. So I would have to have a TMR mixer, keep it running, move feed over, and fill water. So lots of work that I'd prefer to not do if I can automate things and make it simpler. Again, the reality of where I'm at is going to make that better. Alright, so you can see we've got 39% of the fertilizer, so I got 4,000 liters, so I'm going to go ahead and try to get going here. Just trying to visually line up with the field. And again, this is obviously not that big of a challenge to be perfect. It's grass. It can be a little bit off, but obviously I'd prefer it to be you know, what I want. So let me turn things on. And do I have to plow before grass? Interesting. Huh. Because, yeah, normally I wouldn't have to do that, but with grass it appears I may need to. So that does start to make things a bit... Let me just make sure. Oh, well, no. I have not turned on the seeder. I pressed the right button, I promise you I did. But, clearly something is off, so... Oh, you want to know why? I didn't have the... No, I do have the hoses connected. Okay. I just must have not hit the button properly or whatever. Well, let's see. I mean, because I was going to say, if I have to plow, I'm definitely not going to be doing a crop as well this year, because that's going to be a good amount of time that I don't really have. Alright, something is off here, because I did press the button again. Am I disconnected back here somehow? I am. How did that happen? Wow. Because it's manual attached, so there shouldn't be any way for that to have happened without... I'm wondering, you know, because I didn't work my field last time? Or, wait, no, I planted after JP. I don't know. I was going to say, I'm wondering if I had a situation. Okay, now it's on. Now I can hear it. Alright. So, now I'm not surprised, because I was a bit taken aback by the fact I'm like, I can't believe grass behaves differently, but it is grass, so I thought, well, maybe. So, it looks like we don't use a ton of product here. Now, since I'm not actually going ahead and like selling the grass as a crop, I'm not going to include it in my normal farm finances the way I would as far as track the supply and see how profitable it is. because grass will kind of grow perpetually, and so there's just kind of going to be a cost of material that is involved that is just part of doing business per se. But I was going to say the seeds are leaving a little bit faster than the fertilizer, but not much. But either way, if I have 4,000, I mean, I really only need like 1,000 seeds to leave and I'll be good. So it looks like field 39, which is the one ahead of me, is not planted. So this is a good thing, because I can drive into it. This was again another part of my decision, because I knew that I would not be able to... let me see, I'm trying to line up here. I'm on my GPS. I'll go with it, but I think I'm going to run over, although the angle here is not as severe as it is on the other side of the field. You can kind of see that on the mini-map, where the field's kind of starting at the numbers and then going way up, almost like I could fit another number by the time I get to the end, and I'm sure by the time I get all the way to the end I would be able to, but you can almost not see a slope on this part of the field. So this may work out nicely. What it doesn't do is the fertilizer still applies at a set rate. We don't have precision farming yet. So, but not, having someone working, having JP have 39 where I want to stay out of it, and this kind of being the easiest way to seed this field, that was another reason, is like, this is the last time I'm going to have to run this planter on the field, I think, unless grass does something really weird over a longer period of time that requires you to plow it under and replant before it kind of comes back to full cycle or something. But I've never seen that. That would be news to me. Alright, so it did work. So let me cycle back, and then let's return to the cows and the shaking wheel. Alright, so having the barn with the robotic feeder, with the feeder robot, just mentally seems like something I'm going to be able to deal with. So the capacities are like, I think it's like 120,000 silage and 100,000 each of all the other products, including, honestly, mineral feed, which, if I was to buy that much mineral feed, that would be a bit crazy, but, I'll basically have to head over to the store there, just buy pallets and load them into a trailer from the pallet. So I may buy, 40, 50,000, whatever I can fit, because I think I'm going to have to transport that in the Crampy, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm honestly going to have to see how I can get it there, because bringing it a pallet load at a time is going to be interesting. So that is one thing I haven't figured out or thought through. I just kind of assumed I can get the supply there however I need to, but that may be a bit of a monkey wrench. But that would be kind of the only thing, and it would be just like my lime with my auger, where it's a very tedious process, but it happens quite infrequently. So, I would have to do that with a TMR mixer too. It's just, at that point, I think I used like 1,000 liters of mineral feed to supply 44,000 liters of TMR for the output. So the other challenge, however, with that is, unlike other productions, the feeding robot doesn't really explain those ratios, so it's something I'm going to have to kind of keep an eye on and learn, because I can't imagine it's 1-to-1 where it's going to be using significantly higher amounts of mineral feed. If it is, that would actually be challenging. That might be something I guess I want to take a look at, but even so, I don't know that it would make sense, because it's basically, though, like $1 a liter, so it'd be like 1,000 per 1,000 liters. So that would mean, for if it used 100,000 to make 100,000 liters of TMR, I'd be spending $100,000 just on mineral feed, and I think that would be really hard to make up for. So I'm imagining the ratio's the same, it's just not published. But I honestly didn't watch that enough, but I may be able to perform some additional experimentation and get that settled. So your question then may be, okay, so you don't need a TMR mixer, but you still need silage. So, because that was another part of the work that was like, wow, that's just a lot of work, is collecting up mowed grass, something, chaff, putting it in a bunker silo, compacting it, covering it, waiting, and then you're sitting there having to scoop it out with a scoop. Well, we're also able to use fermenting silos, which is something that, once again, in the farms I've worked with, they never had. They always did the bunker silo version, and not sure why when I look at it, because it's really a 1-to-1, so you're not losing anything. It's just like a bunker silo, where if I have 1 liter of grass and I compact it, cover it, and it turns into silage, I end up with 1 liter of silage. This does the same thing, just without the compacting and whatever, and it does it in a silo that I can then just unload into a truck, move over to the feeding robot station in large quantities, and dump it and let things operate. So instead of having what I thought I was going to need, which was going to be a barn, a bunker silo, a TMR mixer, and I guess that was it. But basically those 3 things, I'm going to be able to instead have the barn with the feeding robot and a fermenting silo, and that will allow me, with what I'm doing on the field and everything else I have, to feed to operate things and keep the cows going. Now, the additional item I'm going to need is a forage wagon, because I don't have that to pick the grass up off the field or the hay up off the field. And that's also part of what I'm going to need to figure out is, am I going to basically do half the field in hay and half the field in grass? Because otherwise, the other thing I think I'm going to need to do is I would have to have some storage location for those products before it goes into the fermenting silo. Well, no, the fermenting silo stores them. What am I talking about? I just put them in. So, yeah, the piece I'm going to have to figure out is there's 3 sizes of fermenting silo. The largest one will store, I think it's either 925,000 or 975,000 liters, actually, of each. Grass, hay. I think you can do chaff as well, but obviously to get chaff I'd need to do some more things. But the one thing I don't have to store is the straw that I get off the field. So, when I grow some grain, I'll have to do that to get some straw. That's the other piece that I need. I'm going to fix it now because this is not going to straighten out, and then I'm going to just be touching it up later. So let me go further out here. I guess I'll go this way. I don't know. That boat's just tossing me off because obviously otherwise I'd just pull straight in and it would be simpler. But I think I'm going to get stuck on it. Well, luckily it worked, so I think now it'll snap where it needs to. It moved a bit. It's going to be close. Oh boy. It moved 3. I think I still am going to have the same problem, but oh well. Yet another reason to not work this field more than I need to. But yeah, the only thing that might happen is I might need some place to store what comes off the field. But once again, I don't have to pull the grass more frequently than I need it. And the nice thing with grass is there's a gigantic harvest window, in essence. The only challenge we'll have is if I leave it laying on the field, I think, well, I know that's bad for the server, actually, so that just negates it. But what I was going to say is, would it vanish over a few days? Because in some of my single-player games, but I'm using precision farming there, and it doesn't appear to. So I don't think Seasons has the same impact that it did, where if it rained and other things, that suddenly you'd get less. I think it just could resaturate anything that was dried, for example, but that's about it. So with those discoveries, that basically was kind of like, this is feasible. The only thing I was wrestling with a little bit in my mind was, well, I have fewer cows at 240 than I do at 500, but again, for my mental stability, I know that this is just the right way to go. If somehow I get going and I find it enjoyable and sustainable, I'm going to go ahead at this point and do it, try to set things up in a way where I'm forward thinking that I may put in a second barn. Which still wouldn't get me quite to 500, but it would get me to 480. And we could go from there. And obviously, if I needed to spread out and suddenly the only way I can get out is through the one side of my yard, those are decisions I can make and things I can do because, hey, I'm enjoying this enough, and I'm going to have to block my way out or something. But the other thing then, ultimately, that I'm thinking, if I wanted to, I could potentially then grow into productions and throw a dairy up and just immediately be using my milk in the dairy to, at minimum, produce butter and cheese. And because I think those just require milk. And, it gives us a path to a lot of options, where with, like, the pigs, we're doing our options. We have them. We grow them to adulthood, and we sell them. And in the interim, we feed them. So, yeah, what I was worried about is exactly what happened. But, whoops. If I back up while on GPS with this, yeah, it doesn't work very nicely. So, let me get myself here and pull myself forward now. And I should be good now for certain, because this will track along and follow. So we can get that cleaned up. There we go. So, you know, it's kind of like, I mean, we're in Shellbrook, we're in Canada, we're on a giant map. I'm somewhat feeling like, even though I don't think I need it, just to not be kicking myself later, I should probably just go with a large fermenting silo, because again, if I then wanted to expand to more barns, or I wanted to do whatever, I'm not running into the weird situation, because I tested the large and I tested the small. There's one in between, which is kind of where I was going to land, and I may still do that, but I'm not sure. But basically, there's 60,000, 100,000, and 200,000. And so the smaller one has a capacity of, I think, like 325. So it is about a third. And you're paying, you know, more. But the other piece is the output, the production amount, is also faster. And I think it's at least triple, if not more, in the larger fermenting silo than it is in the smaller, or the smallest. And so I'm assuming the middle one probably is landing at 500, 600,000 is what you can put into it. And that again is of each type, so even though I wouldn't be putting chaff in, you know, I could put 1.8 million liters into the large one and have it convert that to silage, and then I would assume I'm not going to need silage for a while, because even at 120,000 liters in the feeding robot, you know, we're talking over 10 fillings, and once again, we're not going to run things till they are empty. At least that's not the intent. You know, and the nice thing compared to what I have with the pigs is, you know, I should be able to much more easily handle that, because the pigs in essence are almost an example of what the TMR mixer would be, where I can only put 1,700 liters of potatoes in every time, for example. Even though I have 200,000 liters of potatoes, I can't just fill a bin with a lot of potatoes and have it feed things. And so I'm constantly having to worry about feeding that material in. You know, the difference potentially will be is that because I can put 100,000 straw and 100,000 hay and 120,000 silage, like, it should run longer. Now, once again, what I don't know is once I get to 240 cattle, you know, am I still in a cycle where every 4 to 5 months it consumes that much food? You know, because if it does, I mean, once again, the nice thing is the silage and the hay is going to be generated from the grass field. So that's going to be here, and then, you know, in the silo, and then I'm for creating silage, and then move it over. But, you know, whether it's grass or hay, I can basically fill that silo with a mixture, and it produces in essence twice as fast, which is also part of why I thought, you know, the middle ground, because to me the small one was tight, because knowing that I need 120,000 of silage, knowing that basically it's 320,000, and yes, you know, doubling it is 640,000. You know, it just isn't the same margin of error. And so it's like, to save in essence 100,000 to go with the middle instead of the big, I just don't know that it makes a lot of sense. And I think the footprint's very, very similar, because it goes up rather than around. So it's not as if I have a big difference in the amount of space it's going to take up. So I think I'm just going to go with the big one. So if I do that, round numbers, we need $1 million for the barn, we need 200,000 for that, which is 1.2 million of our 2.2 that I'm moving in. You know, plus obviously I've got a little bit of cushion here, and I could move some more. I do have more available, I had about $6.5 million in the bank. So, I feel I'm in a good spot where I have the opportunity to kind of do this effectively. And that's really what I've heard from a lot of the folks who have done major operations. I think I shared at one point very early in this series as we were talking about animals. I worked a location that had 6 200 head cow barns. So we had 1,200 head of cattle. And, so I understand a big cow operation and so forth, but folks did say that kind of unless you're willing to go and focus on that, you can't make dairy profitable at small scale, which is why, I'm assuming a single barn would be okay. But, I'm not going to buy one of the small enclosures, for example, and then, make a few thousand a year and so forth. So, kind of building the big operation and having that cash, that was kind of what it was shared with me with the FM that was doing that was, go ahead and make sure you have enough money to fully get started before you start. It's not something you can ease your way into easily, because otherwise you're just hemorrhaging money in the beginning. So, that gets you where we're at. I'm going to get this field planted in grass, and I'll see what's happening after that. I'm pretty sure right now I'm going to wait for certain. Like, I'm not going to turn around today and plant the other part of the field, because once again I have crops to sell, so it's almost as if I have some more money in the bank there if I suddenly need to generate some more cash for some reason, but I think I'll be fine. And so I want to focus on some things, and obviously I have some potential things to test, so there's some other draws of my time. For example, again, is that mineral feed consumed at a slower pace? So I'm definitely going to go ahead and do that, because I kind of want to go in eyes wide open. But it would take a lot to switch me to the 500 head cow barn. Now the difference there is too, the 500 head cow barn is just $500,000. So, there is a cost savings because you don't have the automatic feeding built into EMR mixer, all that benefit that makes the automated barn price itself up pretty high. But once again, I've worked hard over the decades here in FSN to get myself a lot of cash, and I'm going to take advantage of that and go with a much more automated dairy operation than I would have otherwise, and it's as automated as we can get in FSN. So I'm going to get this done, but with that, I will see you next time.